Hey, good morning. We're starting just a couple minutes late, so we'll have to go a little fast. We are up to the Mishnah. I wanted to start out by mentioning Rashi, which also happens to be relevant in the Ben Chananel from yesterday, where we quoted Rachva of Pumbedisa, where we said that Reb Zera said that whatever Reb Rabba says, take that seriously because he is mamish medag gomer shmaisim and puma demara. Shamper, he is very careful about the traditions that he hears to know exactly who it is. Kirach for the Pumpadisa, like Rach for the Pumpadisa, who said over a vart about Rabbi Huda about Harabias is stop kafel. So Rashi gave two options as to what the precision of Rachba Pumpadisa was. What was so special about him? Either it was that he was medayek, the Lashon Rabbi, and he used the word stav instead of itztaba. Or the second option that Rashi gives, which is the option that Rabbi Chananel picks, is the fact that he would say over the shame Rebbe, if his name was Rav Yehuda or Rebbe Yehuda, turn the lights, please. Then he would essentially be very, very precise as to the names of the Rabbeim. If it was Rav Yehuda or Rabbi Yehuda, and Rashi says, "V'kashli begavo tuva chad lerach v'leroa Rabbi Yehuda miyamav lo Rabbi Yehuda Rabbi Loi lo Rabbi Yehuda Nasir." That can't be Rabbi Yehuda Nasir because he was a Amar, so they changed it on the side to Rabbi. So one of the questions Rashi has is like being so precise that the name of Rav, Rebbe, Reb, like this is the sounds a little bit extenuating. So Rashi prefers the first option in terms of the actual substantive word that he used, but the Rebbe Chananel does not. The Rebbe Chananel prefers to use the idea that he quoted over from the name of very precisely. Okay. The topic I really wanted to get into was how many times we see in the Gemara where the Gemara is quoting over various conversations or quotations from people who never met the people that they are quoting, let alone have a tradition from them. And nevertheless, they are still quoting them. This is something that you have to always bear in mind throughout Shas when you have people being brought down as quoting another name. Did they actually learn by that person? Did they actually ever meet that person or not? This is what Rashi is pointing out here, which is a much larger issue, which we cannot long get into. Many times we will see in Shas, we'll try to point it out from time to time, imagine conversations where the protagonists never actually saw each other, let alone had the conversation. It was the Stama de Talmuda that is creating the conversation on the page. It's a very fascinating thing. We don't have time to do that. Maybe we'll do some of this on a Sunday. Okay, continues the Gemara. The Mishnah, we're up to Lamed Gimel base. Today we're going to do Lamed Dalet Amud Aleph. We're at the Mishnah. If somebody says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu should have mercy on us because of the fact that He has mercy on the mother bird, or on good things that Hashem does, He should be remembered for the good. Or maidim, if He says mishaskenas, in all these cases we shut Him up. What do you mean? What's the problem with all of these things? Says the Marbishlam, it makes sense when somebody's saying we're going to make him go quiet. Why? Because it's mashma like this, saying there's two gods, Maidim and then Maidim. And also, if somebody is going to be saying thank you to the Rebbeinu Shalom for all the wonderful things that he does, it's mashma for the wonderful things he does, he's going to thank Hashem, but not for the terrible things that he does. Utana, we learn later on we're going to have a person has to thank Hashem, he has to bless their Rebbeinu Shalom for the evil that happens in his life, just like he has to bless him for the good. So I can understand why those two situations we're not comfortable with a person who is saying praise to their Rebbeinu Shalom in this manner. But what's the problem of somebody saying Hashem, the same way you have mercy on the mother bird, should have mercy on us? What's wrong with that? Why are we mishaskin? I say, why do we have to make this guy go quiet? Says the Marpli Butcher Amaroi, Bimarava, there's two Amaram in the west, two Amaram in Eretz Yisrael who had a dispute about the matter. What was the problem? Basically, Rabbi Yosef Zvida. God Amaram Neshamazel Kinam Ma'aseh. One says it's going to create Kinam. I mean, I'm not sure how many birds are coming to listen to this guy's tefillah, but in theory, you're creating Kinah in Ma'aseh Bereshis. That what? You're saying that on the one hand, Hashem has mercy on this bird, but He doesn't have mercy on anything else, as Rashi says. Shemat l'kina lemar al eila chas. V'lo yashab b'yosef. He's chas. He has a mercy for this, but not for anything else. The Chanom Neshoesim Midas Shkodesh Baruch Hu Rachamim Ve'ein El Gezeres. And the other opinion is that what he's doing, this guy, by saying Al Katzipi Gerachamecha, is he's making the Midas of Hakadosh Baruch Hu into Rachamim. He's making the laws, the diktats of the Rebbeinu Shalom into something that has to do with mercy, and it is not correct. It's only Gezeres, says Rashi. Midaisav means here mitzvahsav, meaning the mitzvahs of Hashem. Hashem didn't do this for mercy. Rather, to put on the Jewish people various laws, to teach them that we are His servants. We do the things even if they don't make sense, even things that people are going to make fun of us about. Sometimes the non-Jews or others will ask, well, what's the point of doing this kind of mitzvah? We do it anyways. But we don't try to make a understanding of it that is more than meets sort of the eye. We don't try to explain, oh well, this is because God is so charitable and He's so just and He's so nice. Like, because if you're going to do that, then you're going to effectively put yourself in a dangerous situation. So again, two different reasons as to why we are mishaskin and the person said either it's because he's being matl kinamai separations, or because he is being oisem mitzvahs of Hakadosh Baruch Hu rachamim ve'einin ela gezeres. What do we see in this Gemara? We see in this Gemara something though that I think is very important to mention. That is, the gestalt of the Gemara seems to be that what would a person say on the mitzvah of Shiluach HaKain, that what is driven by is rachamim. That's why we push away the mother bird before we take away the eggs. And this becomes then a fundamental, practical, halachically relevant question as follows. The question comes up more often than you'd like. Nowadays, there are lots of bird nests. So somebody comes and says, Rabbi, I'd like to do Shiluach HaKain. How do I do it? Why do you want to do Shiluach HaKain? Oh, because the Torah says that you get a long life. Okay, wonderful. And exactly where do you want to do Shiluach HaKain? And oh, I have this thing in my house, the birds. And how do you think you're going to get a long life? Oh, because I'm going to be throwing away the mother bird, like the Torah says, and so you beg the question is, I'm sorry, why is it that you're doing Shiluach HaKain? Because you want to have long life. And how are you going to do that? By pushing away the mother. How do you push away the mother bird? Why is that going to give you a long life? Aren't you hurting the mother bird? You're making the mother bird feel sad. Whatever animals feel, like we talked about the other day, there were different Rambans. So on this, it comes out, it's actually a machlekes in the Rishonim. There is Rabbeinu Bechaya. The Rabbeinu Bechaya quotes from mystical sources that the reason that you do Shiluach HaKain is his iris rachamim la'ir yilala be'ima ilah. That is to say, by making the mother bird go crazy, by divorcing her, pushing her away from her young, and her being in huge amount of pain, then you're going to create rachamim from the Shemayim. But that is definitely not the simple understanding. The simple understanding was you need the beitzim of the Ephraim. So in order to minimize the suffering of the mother bird, you push her away before you take it. And then the mother bird is going to come back. So when this Gemara is telling you that somebody says, because, and the problem is with Meshaskin, I say, why? Because either he's Matlakinamai Separatious, because over here Hashem is Rachamim, and over there he doesn't, or he's making the mitzvahs of HaKadosh Baruch Hu into Rachamim, and it's not just Gezerah. Either way, what is both opinions agreeing on? What would be a person bringing that Al Kansi Begir Rachamecha? Only that it's Rachamim. The person's going to be saying it, and either opinion is because it's a showing HaKadosh Baruch Hu cares. He has a certain sympathy. So if you're saying that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has a certain sympathy, that's predicated on which approach of the Rishonim? On the approach of the Rebbeinu Bechaya, this Oyer Rachamim by being so mean to the mother bird. So that's not a situation where you're bringing up Rachamim. You're making the mother bird feel bad. You're making the mother bird feel terrible. And that's precisely the point. You're supposed to be an Achzar. That's why you should go do Shiluch HaKain even when you don't need the eggs at all. But that's not benefit with this Gemara. This Gemara only fits if you understand it the other way, the Pashut way, which is that if you need the eggs or the basin, do it in the most minimal way. Like for example, it's not because it's a vart in trying to create achzarius and be so nasty to the mother bird. No, it's the idea that you're trying to create rachamim in the sense of like when you're doing something that is going to be difficult, do it in the most minor way possible. Do it in the most in the least hurtful way possible. This is a tshuva from Chassam Sofer in your Day Simon Kuf. The Chassam Sofer says, "Listen, them ain't sarch levanim. If somebody doesn't need the eggs or the chicks, so then a person isn't supposed to be doing it. Why? Because the enim mechlev el achzarias, or when makom shenilmat shalonis achzar, in the place that you're supposed to learn about, that you're supposed to be gentle and merciful, that's the place you're becoming an achzar. That's becoming a nasty person. The Stam Sefer concludes that heka the plika nister manigla, where we have a dispute between the mystical sources and the simple ones, the ones that are revealed to us in the Gemaras, and lanu esek ben stars, we don't go with the stars. That's how he goes. Obviously today, not everybody is Overlander. Even the Overlanders are passing against Chassam Sofer, and they're very happy to do Achzarias in order to be awakening the Ima Ilah in heaven. Fine. I should also mention that this relates to the wider question of Psachim Kufya test. The Gemara tells us there about the fact that Hashem didn't give us the various reasons of the mitzvahs, the time yat Torah, the time mitzvahs. You don't have that. That's the Rishonim go in on that, and they go in big time. The Chinuch, very famously giving all the reasons because of the fact that we didn't have that initially, and that could end up in a situation where you could come up with reasons that are going to be problematic, like the Maharsha says. That explain the Gemara that we are megal devarim, that the atik germ was mechasa, it could end up being problems. Why? Because we have an example of Shlomo Melech where he had reasons for the mitzvahs, and he ended up taking these reasons, and obviously, with the two places where the Torah gives reasons, by having a melech too many wives or having horses, money, and he said, "Oh, these things are not going to apply to me," and he was nefshal in that. So we attempt as much as possible to do the mitzvahs because they are mitzvahs, not to do the mitzvahs because they are logically sensible to us. Because in situations where they won't be, we end up, or in situations where they are logically sensible, that's why we're doing them, then we can end up being nifshal. Reward is not what I'm saying. It was the reason. It's not the reward. I'm not focusing on the reward. I'm focusing on the reason. Right? Huh?
Still says that.
It is one of the few places where it says the reward. That's correct. But I said focus on the other places. Keep it off aim also says the reward, over there. And so there's the challenge of taking on the risk of being an achzar is not a simple one. So in life, one doesn't always get to do all the mitzvahs. So I myself have never been as an Oberlander. My Oberlander lament, I've never been able to do Shiluch HaKain because I've never needed the chicks. One day I may need it, in which case I'll be the first to do so. Okay, continues the Gemara. All right, so where are we up to? We are up to the so the Gemara says, right, Ahud Enachis, about 4 lines from the widest lines. Ahud Enachis, Kamei de Rabba. So somebody went to go daven in front of Rabba. Hashem, you have a mercy on the mother bird. So you should have mercy on us. Wow, says Rabba, this guy really knows how to daven so beautifully. So Abaya says to Rabba, we learned that you're supposed to make the guy quiet. You're not allowed to daven like this. Rabba, of course, knew the halacha, but he was testing Abaya. He was checking out to see, is he sharp? Does he know what's going on? Does he know the halacha? So that's why he said, "Oh wow, this guy's wonderful," in an effort to catch him and see if he would in fact be sharp enough. Somebody went to go down and daven in front of Rabbi Chanina. It was like unbelievable. The guy had so many different praises, right? Instead of saying he had all these other things to say, him to learn how to see him. So Rabbi didn't do anything. He waited till he finished. Kisi, and when he finished davening, I'm going to say, "You done? Why did you stop? Why did you say all these things? Anan hani tlas damrinon. Ilav damrinon Moshe Rabbeinu b'Oraisa. So if not for the three things that Moshe Rabbeinu said in the Torah, Hakel, Hagadol, Hagiba, Vanera, Asher Lisa Panim Lekach Sheichad. If not for the fact that Moshe Rabbeinu had said these three things, and then the Ashkenaz came along and put it into our tefillas. We would not be able to say it. We have a heter to say only because it was in the Chumash and because the Ashkenaz says Hagdol decided to adopt it into tefillah. But if not for that, we would never be allowed to say and you're saying so much. You know what it's like compared to a king. He has like a lot of money. He has millions of dollars. He's saying he has millions of dollars. You say, oh, he has hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's not a praise. I'm a millionaire. You're telling me I'm worth $100,000? It's not a praise. It's an insult, right? If somebody has many golden coins, you tell me how many silver coins he has. It's not that you're doing a great thing. You're doing a terrible thing. It's an embarrassment. This becomes a basis. This Gemara becomes a basis for the Rambam Nebuchim and Chelik Aleph, Parak Nun Ches, and other places. The Rambam is a negative theologian. What does a negative theologian mean? It means that he does not say anything positive about the Bereshit. It doesn't mean he doesn't say anything positive about the Bereshit. What it means to say is he says nothing positive, affirming in his existence. And the nature of his existence is not positive, only negative. You say there is no power that is as great as the Bereshit. That the Rambam can agree with. But if you say God is so powerful, he can make the winds blow, he can make the universe expand, and his power is limitless. Okay, shkach. It's not God's power. It's not merely limitless. It's beyond limitless. It's beyond words. He's outside of space and time. You have no ability within words. Your verbiage is poor and can never define anything. So therefore, the greatest praise for the Rebbeinu Shalom, and the greatest way you can rise up in your understanding of the Rebbeinu Shalom is to further quantify what he is not. So every day you say, the Rebbeinu Shalom, he is not limited by anything in this world. And you understand that better every day. You understand what the size of the universe is. He's not limited by this world. Wow. Right? We say that there is no power in the world that can approximate even a kihuzeh, a mashu of a mashu of a mashu. You keep on going with the mashu of a mashu of the Rebbeinu Shalom. More qualification that you give, the more that you say you have no understanding of what he is, the better you are in terms of getting at, not at what the Rebbeinu Shalom is, because you can never, but the more you're getting closer to not having all of the mistaken ideologies and theologies that people have in their minds, where they all are picturing a Rebbeinu Shalom. And why, we mentioned it before, again and again and again, the Rambam says, why is it that, did I mention this before? I think I mentioned this before. Yes, we did, right? Which we said, is, the Gemara's understanding was that for the words that are kiflayim, the words that appear two times, anisana, right? If you're going to think that appear two times, you don't have to say it like that. But the Rambam expanded it a lot more to anthropomorphisms, things where you attribute something to God in a positive, which is not possible. It's only in the negative. Finish the Gemara. So we are up to the two dots. Once we already said something from Rabbi Chanina, we're going to quote another thing from him, a very famous line from Rabbi Chanina. All is in the hands of heaven except for Yirah Shamayim, right? There is one version of Rabbi Chanina, right? A few times in Shas this is mentioned. There is one version where it's mentioned in a different way, which is Rabbi Chanina also says Hakol b'dei Shamayim, except for Tzinam Apachem, right? Getting a cold is in the hands of a human being. You can wear a coat and you will avoid the cold. But the other times Rabbi Chanina's quote is all for this line, Hakol b'dei Shamayim, quote to Yirah Shamayim. We have this Gemara in Megillah, Nida, etc., where everything is in the hands of heaven except for Yirah Shamayim. What am I going to say to the Jewish people? What is Hashem asking of you? Only to fear Hashem. Do you think Yirah Shamayim is nothing? All that Hashem has in his repositories, all that he has in his oitzeres is Yirah Shamayim. Yiras Hashem here, sorry, as the pasuk says that Yirah Shamayim is his oitzer. Says the more like Moshe Milsa Zitrasi. When Moshe Rabbeinu was saying, "What is God asking of you? Only to be Yirah Shamayim?" No, for Moshe Rabbeinu that was the Milsa Zitrasi. That was easy for Moshe Rabbeinu. When you're asking for somebody for a nice jug that he has, and he has it, so then to him, it's like, okay, yeah, it's not a big deal. you need to borrow my car. No problem. I have a car here. It's not a big deal. But if he hasn't got a car, if he hasn't got if he hasn't got something, right? If you ask somebody, can I borrow a pitcher, and he doesn't have a pitcher, so then it would seem to him like it was a very big deal. Now, just to mention the Gemara Nida there in Tasai, the context over there is that the Malach says that when the baby is going to be conceived, right? This relates to a wider question we discussed in our Chaim class some weeks ago. The mindset that a person has at a time of intimacy has a very big impact on the child. This also relates to the ideas that we see in Paris Vayetze. We discussed that at one time as well in terms of Yaakov and the Maklis and the Gemara and Avodah Zarah, about the Chavdal, about the Paraduma, all these kinds of things that in Chazal's mind at the time of conception can have an impact. Here, it's actually also in it's actually also we did it. I don't know if we did this in this Rabbeinu Yonah, but if you look at Rabbeinu Yonah, it is in Rabbeinu Yonah. I'm pretty sure I saw this early in Rabbeinu Yonah. I don't know that we did it here. Rabbeinu Yonah, I think, said. It was in the early pages here. I think it was in Dalet or Gimel. There's Rabbeinu Yonah that says this as well, and he talks about the fact that. Let's give me 1 second, see if I can find it. Yeah, it's Gimel and Alf and the Dape Arif. Rabbeinu Yonah says as follows. He says that tefillah shemaspal chadim ha'hiroyan, the tefillah that somebody davens before conception, he ma'ila yosim tefillah shemaspal achar kach. It's more helpful than the tefillah that somebody davens afterwards. Because at the time of conception, that will decide what this person will be. Because Nida, like the Nida Tazayin says that I just quoted before, Malach Hamun Ali Royan, the Malach who is in charge of conception, the Gemara says that he asked the Rebbeinu Shalom, is this tipa going to be wealthy or poor, stupid or brilliant? But the Gemara says, but he doesn't ask the Rebbeinu Shalom, is this person going to be a righteous person or not a righteous person? Why? Because Rabbi Chanina says that Hakol b'dei Shemayim chutz miyar Shemayim. I should point out that the Rabbeinu Yonah continues and it says, even though tefillah is able to mevatel mazel, Gemara Shabbos tells us in Kuf Nun Vav that there is no mazel for the Jewish people. And from Avraham Avinu, we say me istagnina shalcha. You don't have to worry about what the astrologers say, what the mazel says. You can go away from that. Nevertheless, that we are not reliant on mazel. Nevertheless, we still have to understand. But if you didn't have the right type of intentions at the time of conception, then you're going to need more tefillah to mevatel the mazel. Whereas somebody who has the right intentions at the time of conception does not need that amount of tefillah because they will have ensured that at the time of conception things went in the right way. I will show you. Therefore, the figure nothing zeh asim sheispal al one of kadam attachment sheyagiu leela hashtei milas gedolos mitoch gam ken yiska v'yikarish asim shataz v'yasher b'ishtay shedi one of royim. Fine. Here's the Gemara. So we are now at the 2 dots, 4 lines from the bottom. So that a person says, we make him go quiet. Whoever says Shema, Shema, it's like he said, and we are going to Mishaskan, I say. Is a meguna, but we have a problem because the Brisa says that somebody reads over the Shema and he says Shema 2 times. It's a meguna, meaning it's not mashaskin. So we just discussed it. It's not a nice thing to do, but we're not mashaskin the guy. So it says the Gemara megunahu the havish shesuke lo mashaskin and lay. So you see, you're not correct. So you just said that Shema is like but it's not true. Like Kasha Adam Milsa v'tani le v'had Amar psuka v'tani le. One situation, the guy saying Shema. One guy is saying Shema 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 Echad. So which one is which? So if you look at Rashi says Milsa v'tanile. The difference is the situation of when somebody's saying a word by word. If somebody's saying word by word, then it's disgusting, and therefore we will tolerate it, but it's not nice. But we're not going to shut him up. But if somebody says Amar Pasuk Shalem, but if somebody says a whole pasuk Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then says again Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, then we're going to be shaskin and why the Mexic Ishtei Rishri. So we're going to shut him up because it sounds like he's davening to two gods. However, the Ben Chananel, if you look at the Ben Chananel, the bottom, the Ben Chananel says exactly the opposite. The Ben Chananel says, "Well, no, psuka psuka b'tani le, psuka psuka emishaskin." I say, "Mia maguna." If somebody says over Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad, and then he says it again, that's maguna, but not mishaskin. Imkar kol ha'paisha v'chazal v'kavel shapir avad the haki isa b'risham. But if somebody is going to say over the whole parsha, and then he's going to say over it again, that's okay. But in the situation, if somebody says Shema Shema, so for the Rebbeinu Chananel, that's what you're going to be shasking. That's what you're going to say. Oh, he is davening to Yeshua. So which do we paskin like? Again, it's Machlekes Rashi and the Chananel. If you look at the top Tosfos, Tosfos says, I'm sorry, it's on Lamed Dal Lamed Aleph. It goes, the two top Tosfos said on Lamed Dal go on Lamed Gimel base. The top Tosfos says, I'm writing Madim Shaskin. So Rishami Halad the Tem B'Sibav B'Yochatak on Nimheim. If the Rishami makes this out that this is talking about in a tzibur, but privately, then it could be tachanunim. So Tosfos is adding in a detail, which is there's a difference between doing this as a yachid or as a tzibur. Fine. Second Tosfos, they're on the top of the page of Lam. Psuk of Kafle, Psuk Shaskan, the Mexico Page Ubahag, Pirish Ben Chanan, Mafarsh Ibcha, Psuk, Emishaskan, Mimaguno. Right. So, what do I want to get from this Tosfos? We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to skip now to the bottom few lines of Tosfos. Look at Tosfos. Tosfos talks about the fact, Masha Imrim. Hashem Elokim Zayin Pa'am on Yom Kippur, right? On Yom Kippur we say Hashem Elokim. Is that a problem? He's saying it 7 times. V'Yamarava. I don't know what he means V'Yamarava. I looked at it quickly in the Siddur this morning to see in Hoshana Rabbah if we say Hashem Elokim 7 times. I didn't have it in my Siddur, but I think there may be Siddurim where they have that a few times. Yes. Does anybody remember offhand? Or have a Siddur? Does anybody? Well, let's see what the I didn't have an article Siddur, so I didn't know what the current minig is, but in the art scroll I'm not seeing either that you say Hashem Elokim or on Hoshana Rabbah 7 times. I don't see that either. Yeah, I don't think that is the minig, but nevertheless, I seem to say that they did it on Yom Kippur and on Yom HaRava. Connected the 7 heavens. Again, this is a firmament idea based upon the Ptolemaic type of a conception of the astronomical world that we are inhabiting. It's not relevant anymore today. So is that okay or not okay? So Tosfos says, minig kosher who says Tosfos. That is a good. It's a fine minig. The Gamatzinu Bikrosh De Pam Hashem Elokim Gabi Elio, right? By Elio Hanavi said by her karma Hashem Elokim. Right. So therefore, since he said it twice, so therefore you could say it. And if you look at our minig, what do we do on Yom Kippur? Right. So I brought down a master just to make sure I remembered. We say after the Avinu Malkeinu on Yom Kippur, we say Hashem Elokim 7 times. We say Baruch Shem Gvem B'Chusay 3 times. How many times do we say Shema? 1 time, right? Precisely because of this. Even though it's a pasuk and it's not milah b'milah, nevertheless, we are sufficiently concerned about this idea that either way it's a maguna or mashaskana, so we don't want to say Shema twice. That doesn't work, and so therefore we only say that once. Good. Okay. Finish the Gemara. We are now in the last line here of the Gemara. So. So the last line of the Gemara says, well, maybe the person didn't have kavana. If you remember, we had exactly the same question the other day, right on top of Lam Gimel. We also said maybe the person didn't have kavana. So the answer cannot be. I'm sorry, we didn't have that on Lam Gimel. We had it on Lamed Beis on the top of the page. Over there, the Gemara also asked a similar lashon of the Dimul Akiv and Daite, and the Gemara over there said that we wouldn't be bringing down a story from Rabbi Yochanan if it wasn't it was a story about lacking kavanah. Rabbi Yochanan wouldn't have made it as a story. It's obviously not what's going on. The Gemara here asking the Dimul Akiv and Daite. Maybe over here with the person saying Shema Shema, he's saying these things because he didn't have the kavanah the first time. Says the Gemara, "B'sof kivin da'at," and afterwards you're gonna have kavana. Amarle chavrusa klap. We're now at the top of Lamed Daled Amud Aleph. Chavrusa klap b'shemaya miika. You think you're like buddies with their Rebbeinu Shalom? You like kivin da'at meikar. If the person's not gonna have kavana initially, and this you're gonna say the words again. Machin le b'marzafta denafcha. We're gonna beat him up with the hammer of a blacksmith. So you teach him he should have kavana. I remember growing up that I distinctly remember people saying Shema of v'haya. Im Shamaya and Im Shamaya. I remember people doing it. I remember thinking to myself, what's going on here? What does it say in the Gemara Brachos? Is this normal? Is this guy, maybe he was somebody who was not from growing up. Maybe he didn't know this Gemara. And I remember thinking to myself, precisely over here, clearly, he wasn't talking about Shtei Rishuyos. We don't have that kind of problem today. But it was nevertheless, presumably, came out, well, maybe the person was OCD. I have no idea the details anymore. I do remember wondering about this and thinking to myself that he's probably trying to get more kavana, and nobody went to him yet with a hammer of a blacksmith and started beating him and said, "You have kavana the first time." Okay. Continues the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, somebody's getting up to daven, and he makes a mistake. So yavar achar tachtav. Then you got to bring in somebody else in to do the job. Remember, in those days they didn't have Sidurim, they had doing this by heart, and sometimes people made a mistake. And so we ended up, if you remember, we had a Gemara earlier. Where was the Gemara? The Gemara before we had a story. We had the story with the with Shmuel HaKatan, that Shmuel HaKatan did the bracha of the minim, right? And then when he got up the next year, he had forgotten it, and they let him stay there for a couple of hours. They didn't make him step down. What was the reason? Because of the fact that he had been the author of the mimer, so therefore we assume that he hadn't gone bad. The Gemara asks, well, why should you make that assumption? People can go bad, and we had that debate there between Abaya and Rava. I'm not finding the Gemara right now, but essentially, I found the Gemara right now. The Gemara told us there, the top line there on Chavtes, they didn't make him go down. So again, he was the one who was the author of it, and so therefore, since Shmuel HaKatan was the author, they trusted because he had started out the bracha already, so therefore they let him stay. But here we're saying no. Somebody goes up there and he makes a mistake. You're not going to sit there and waiting for hours. You're going to put somebody else in. A person should not be refusing to take on the job at that time. Where do you start? You start from the bracha where this person made the mistake. Someone who's the chazan shouldn't say amen after the berachas kainim. When the person's saying Yivrak Hashem Yishmerecha, the chazan shouldn't say amen, because if he's going to say amen, they're if he's going to get confused. They mention kain elahu, and if there's no kain except for him, lo says kapov, then he shouldn't duchen at all. They have to chashish. No, it says kapov. And if he is confident that he will be able to return to his field regular, then it's not a problem. Remember, all this is in a situation where they did not have Sidurim. Obviously, the Kayan today can dufen even if he's the Chazan, although they still recommend that a Kayan who is the Chazan shouldn't be saying Amen to the bracha of the Kayan. As Rashi says, if the Emas Hatzibur might get confused, he might have a tiruf. There's a couple of cases, and we don't have a lot of time to do this. So the thesis here of Mehechanu Maschil brings down a Yerushalmi of some chazan named Betiti who made a mistake in Kaddish by Ifan Mechayas HaKodesh. He got confused, so they brought in somebody else. The question was where to start, and they said you should start Mimakim Shepasa. And the question is that a dispute between the Yerushalmi and the Babli? Or maybe there's something that you could say that the Yerushalmi is saying that you should go from the Ifanim Mechayas HaKodesh. You can start from there. You don't have to go back to the beginning of the bracha because it's kedusha, and so a person had kavanah with the chazan when he was hearing it, so therefore he's able to continue from there. And you could say shemei ka'ina on the fact that he had already heard the rest of it with the chazan. Maybe there are those that want to say it's machlokes the Bavli Yerushalmi. The problem is we do paskin like this Yerushalmi, which would be against the Bavli, and so how can we justify that? We don't have time right now to go through that further. Lo yana amin achar kainim, the big Taisus over here. So Taisus says that shliach tzibor is not able to call the kainim. You have to have somebody else calling the kainim. And in many shuls you'll see that when they have duchening, you have somebody else who says Karhanim, but Taisus ends up concluding that maybe you don't actually have to have it. If you look at the last line of the Taisus says, Avo Akshav Shehurglu Loim Elokeinu Lekevasenu. B'loshen brachot tefillah einzu hefsek loigara me'anias amen dehacha lechashiva hefsek the precious. So it could be, says Taisus, and now that we're very used to saying Elokeinu Lekevasenu, and you say it until the word Kohanim, so that is part of the regular davening, because normally we're not duchening, we're always saying Elokeinu Lekevasenu. The Taisus suggests that maybe that will be okay. But I think the common practice in many shuls is that you don't say Elokeinu Lekevasenu when you're actually having the duchening on that day. And instead, you have somebody standing next to the chazan who says Kohanim. Fine. Let's just do a little bit of the Gemara and then we'll stop. Says the Gemara, if they're asking you to go daven, first you should say no. If you don't say no, you're like if you jump up straight to daven, you want it so much, you're like a tafshel that has no salt. And if you like constantly say no, I can't do it, I'm not doing it, so then you're like a way too oversalted. Ketzad, what's the right approach? What's the right approach? The first time you say no, the shnim mahavhev. The second time you hem and hoa. Shlish is pashas raglav yared, and then the third time you go and you actually go to daven. Again, the word yared is because yer lifnei teva, you would daven going down, and that is certainly the only custom. But then Shulchan Aruch, we don't see that as much nowadays. Panarabanan, we have a brayz that teaches us shlish reuben kasher miyudin yafa. There are three things that a lot of it is great, and a little bit of it. I'm sorry, a lot of it is bad, and a little bit of it is nice, which is sa'ar melach v'sarvonis, right? If you ever have sourdough, challah, right, you're going to have way too much sourdough, the yeast is not going to be good. If you have way too much salt, it's not going to be good. And if you have way too much sarvonis, you have people being always saying, no, it's not going to be good. But a little bit of it is nice. All right, the time is short, so we'll have to cut it off over here. All right, guys, have a good Shabbos.